Welcome back, everyone, to this deep dive. Today, we're exploring something kind of invisible but really powerful. It's about what we inherit from our families, but not just, the physical traits.
Exactly. It's more like inheriting an old house. You get the furniture, sure, the stuff you can see and touch,
Right.
but you also get the atmosphere, the history hanging in the air, the unspoken feelings.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're diving into, these unseen patterns, these sort of background feelings and ways of being that shape us,
Yeah.
often without us even realizing it.
We want to unpack these invisible inheritances. We'll be looking at it through the lens of, well, Gestalt psychology, which really helps focus on the whole picture.
Offering a new perspective, maybe,
Right.
on why we are the way we are. So that house metaphor, you see the furniture, the obvious things.
That's the figure in Gestalt terms. It stands out against the background. It grabs your attention first.
Okay, and the atmosphere, the feeling of
Oh.
the room.
That's the ground. It's the context, the subtler influences that are always there, shaping how you experience the figure, the furniture. It's pervasive, but less defined.
And applying that to us, psychologically.
Yeah.
Our recognizable traits, maybe a parent's laugh or their work ethic, that's the figure.
Precisely. Things you or others can point to. But the ground is those ingrained patterns of thinking, feeling, reacting, the stuff that runs in the background.
Like how you handle conflict. Maybe you avoid it because one parent always did.
Or maybe you jump right in, maybe aggressively echoing another parent. These responses can feel like our choices, but often they're like these inherited programs running automatically.
It's a bit unsettling, isn't it? This idea that our sense of autonomy, our belief that we're making independent choices, maybe it's partly an illusion.
Well, it certainly challenges the idea of complete independence. So much of our basic psychological software, if you like, gets written in childhood.
Like computer programming,
Yeah.
parents writing the initial code.
In a sense, yes, both explicitly and implicitly. From day one, they're giving us instructions.
Okay, so explicit code is like, always say please and thank you. You're told directly.
Exactly. But the implicit code is much more subtle. It's what's demonstrated, not stated. Maybe uncomfortable topics were always avoided in your house.
Ah, so you learn to shy away from vulnerability, maybe? Without ever being told to.
Precisely. Or perhaps love was mainly shown through buying things. The implicit lesson. Affection equals possessions. It's learned through observation and experience, not words.
And unlike computer code, you can't just easily find the psychological code and rewrite it, can you?
It's much harder because it's not just code. It becomes tangled up with our sense of who we are. It operates largely unconsciously. It feels like me.
Which brings us to the family itself as a whole system, like a gestalt.
Yes, exactly. Every family creates its own unique gestalt, its own rhythm, its specific dynamics, unspoken rules, and often quite defined roles for each member.
You mean like the peacemaker?
Mhm.
Or the rebel, the high achiever?
Those archetypes, yes. They often emerge to keep the family system in balance, to maintain a certain equilibrium.
But that role can be limiting, right? If you're always the responsible one as a kid.
That pattern can become deeply internalized. So, as an adult, you might keep seeking out roles or situations where you have to be responsible, even if it's exhausting or not what you truly want anymore. It maintains the pattern.
So the family gestalt, the system's influence, keeps operating below the surface, even when we think we've moved on.
And that can create real tension, can it? That pull between wanting autonomy, wanting to be your own person, and feeling the weight of that early conditioning.
It really can. And this connects to another key idea, doesn't it? This concept of unfinished business.
Yes, unfinished gestalts. These are unresolved issues, maybe emotional wounds, relationship conflicts, even existential questions that didn't get fully processed or completed.
And they leave a kind of psychic residue.
That's a good way to describe it. A lingering tension. And importantly, this residue isn't always contained within the person who originated it. It can be passed down.
Passed down through generations. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, think about a grandfather who desperately wanted to be a musician, but maybe family duty or circumstances prevented it. He never fulfilled that dream.
Okay.
That unlived dream, that unresolved longing, might subtly influence how music is talked about, valued, or even avoided in the family. Maybe there's an unspoken pressure on later generations towards sensible careers, or perhaps an intense focus on musical achievement for one child. It's not direct, but the energy of the unfinished business is there.
Wow. So the very things we find ourselves struggling with, the patterns we want to break free from.
They might actually hold the keys. They could be pointing back to this unfinished business, either our own or inherited. Examining it gives us a much richer, deeper picture of ourselves.
So the goal isn't necessarily to just get rid of these patterns or to blame our parents for them.
No, definitely not blame. That's often counterproductive. These patterns usually serve some kind of purpose, even if unconsciously within the family system at the time. A better approach is curiosity.
Curiosity. How so?
Instead of judgment, ask questions. What did my parents, intentionally or not, teach me about love, about success, about failure, about belonging?
And how have those lessons shaped my worldview? How do they still show up in my behavior today?
Exactly. When you reframe it like that, moving from maybe feeling like a victim of your past to becoming an explorer of it, you reclaim agency. It's like the inheritance isn't a prison, but maybe a complex puzzle to solve.
Or like that house again, we're not stuck with it exactly as is. We can renovate, keep the good structures, reimagine the parts that don't work for us anymore.
A beautiful analogy. And to do that renovation effectively, we need to understand the underlying mechanics. How does this inheritance actually work on a psychological level?
Right. And you mentioned Gestalt psychology offers some useful tools here, like these hidden programs.
Yes, we can think of them as 5 interconnected programs or lenses, drawing on Gestalt ideas like perception, field theory, and figure ground. They help explain how these patterns take hold and operate.
Okay, let's unpack those. What's the first one?
The first is about the field of perception, basically, what you're trained to see, and just as importantly, what you're trained not to see.
Our perceptual field, like our mental landscape for making sense of the world.
Precisely. It's shaped by where we direct our focus and how we organize the incoming information. And our parents are often the first architects of this landscape. They help design the lens through which we view reality.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine a mother who, maybe due to her own upbringing, constantly emphasized financial security above all else.
Whoa.
Worrying about money, always talking about stability.
Okay.
That constant focus might train the child's attention to prioritize security, maybe to the exclusion of spontaneity or risk-taking, even if those things might lead to greater fulfillment later on. The perceptual field gets narrowed.
So the field acts like a filter, highlighting certain things and making others invisible.
Exactly. And this leads directly to things like selective attention and confirmation bias. If you believe deep down that people generally can't be trusted.
Yeah. You'll probably notice every little instance that seems to confirm that belief.
Right. And you'll likely overlook or dismiss evidence to the contrary, acts of kindness, moments of genuine connection. Your perceptual filter confirms your underlying belief.
So how do we work with that?
The key is awareness. Cultivating awareness of our own perceptual biases. Asking, what do I habitually focus on? What interpretations do I jump to? Then you can start deliberately shifting your focus.
Like if I always focus on potential threats, I could consciously try looking for kindness or cooperation.
Yes, actively scanning for the things your filter usually obscures. It's about consciously trying to expand that perceptual field, to allow more information in, which is the first step to rewriting that particular script.
Okay, that makes sense. Perception is program 1. What's the second hidden program?
Program 2 relates to what we touched on earlier, the unfinished Gestalt, essentially, carrying the emotional burdens of others.
Those incomplete patterns, unresolved conflicts, unexpressed emotions, creating that tension.
And the thing is, a parent's unfinished Gestalt, their unresolved stuff, doesn't just stay neatly packaged within them. It can spill over, not intentionally usually, but because these incomplete patterns are always seeking resolution somehow.
So my parents' issue could end up playing out in my life.
It can. Imagine a father who carried deep feelings of inadequacy, maybe stemming from his own father's constant criticism. That unfinished business in him might manifest as him putting excessive pressure on you to succeed, to achieve, almost as if your success could somehow retroactively heal his own feelings of inadequacy.
Wow, okay, so you end up carrying the weight of their unresolved need.
It highlights just how interconnected we are in a family system. Your psychological landscape isn't just shaped by your direct interactions, but also by these echoes, these reverberations from past generations' struggles.
So recognizing recurring conflicts or those nagging feelings in our own lives could be clues, pointing back to these inherited unfinished gestalts.
Absolutely, they're like breadcrumbs. And the work then becomes about consciously addressing them. Maybe you recognize a relentless drive for perfection in yourself, and you start to wonder if it's partly about compensating for a parent's feeling of failure. Acknowledging that connection is huge. Then you can ask, do I need to keep carrying this? Can I choose to let this particular drive go, or at least moderate it?
Completing what was left open, in a way. making it conscious.
Exactly. Bringing it into awareness allows you to engage with it differently rather than just being driven by it unconsciously.
Okay, so we have perception and unfinished gestalts. What's program 3?
Program 3 involves something called the isomorphic blueprint. Isomorphism basically means a similarity in structure
Similarity between what?
between your inner world, your thoughts, your emotions, how you organize your experience, and your outer world, like your relationships, your environment, how you act. Your internal structure tends to mirror how you engage with external reality.
So how I am on the inside reflects how I operate on the outside.
In many ways, yes. And this is heavily influenced by how our parents modeled coping mechanisms. For example, if your mother consistently dealt with stress by retreating, becoming very solitary,
You might find yourself doing the same thing when you feel overwhelmed, isolating yourself.
you might. It becomes an ingrained blueprint for handling difficulty. It feels like the natural response because it's the primary one you witnessed and absorbed.
And the downside of that.
Well, it can lead to disconnection, both from others because you withdraw, but also disconnection from yourself. If the blueprint involves, say, suppressing emotions because that's what was modeled.
You create a split inside yourself. You push parts of your experience away.
Exactly. And that internal split often leads to external consequences, strained relationships, loneliness, a feeling of not being truly seen or understood because you're not fully present yourself.
So how do we work with this isomorphic blueprint?
The work here is towards reintegration, bringing those disparate pieces, the inner and outer, the suppressed and the expressed, back into a more cohesive whole. Again, awareness first. Notice those moments of disconnection, internally or externally. What triggers the withdrawal? What emotion are you trying to avoid? Then, consciously experiment with new responses.
So instead of isolating, maybe try reaching out, even in a small way.
Precisely. Or instead of automatically suppressing an uncomfortable feeling, allow yourself to just sit with it for a moment, without judgment. It's about gently challenging the old blueprint and building new, more integrated ways of being.
Okay, that's a big one. Reintegration. What's the 4th program?
The 4th program centers on the attention economy, basically. Where your focus goes, your energy flows. Attention is a finite resource, and it's fundamental to how we organize our experience, determining what becomes figure and what stays ground.
And parents play a role in directing our attention.
Immensely. They teach us, explicitly and implicitly, what is considered important, what deserves focus, and what can be ignored or devalued.
Like, if academic achievement was constantly praised and emphasized,
then your attention might become hyper-focused on that, potentially neglecting other vital areas like emotional intelligence, creativity, or even just playfulness. Those things get relegated to the background.
and this can be subtle, right? It might just feel like your own priorities, your own desires.
Very subtle. You might genuinely believe that career success is your ultimate goal without realizing how much that focus was shaped by the attention economy of your upbringing, where perhaps emotional expression wasn't rewarded with attention.
So, what's the move here? How do we redirect our energy?
It starts with an honest audit of your mental resources. Where does your attention habitually go? Are you constantly fixated on outcomes, maybe, instead of the process? Are you ruminating on worries?
Good question.
Once you have a clearer picture, you can start consciously redistributing your focus. If you realize you've neglected your emotional life, maybe dedicate specific time to checking in with your feelings. If creativity has been sidelined, actively schedule time for it. It's about reclaiming control over your attention.
Taking charge of where your energy flows. Okay, that leads us to the 5th program.
Yes, the 5th program is about the script of identity, asking, who are you, really, beyond the roles and expectations?
The narrative we have about ourselves.
Exactly, and that narrative is deeply influenced by our parents' beliefs and messages about things like success, failure, purpose, belonging, what makes someone good or worthy.
So if your parents maybe implicitly equated self-worth with achievement,
Your identity script might read, I am what I achieve. You define yourself primarily through your accomplishments, your successes, maybe your job title.
that script provides structure, I guess, but it sounds limiting too.
It absolutely can be. While these scripts give us a sense of place and direction initially, they can also impose significant limitations. We risk losing touch with our authentic selves, the parts of us that don't necessarily fit the inherited script.
So the work is rewriting the script.
Essentially, yes. It starts by questioning the underlying assumptions in your current script. Whose standards are you actually trying to meet? What definitions of success or happiness are you operating under? Are they truly yours?
And then?
Then you begin consciously revising. Imagine prioritizing, say, personal fulfillment over external approval. What would that look like? How would your choices change? It's about authoring a story that feels more authentic to who you are now and who you want to become.
These 5 programs, perception, unfinished gestalts, the isomorphic blueprint, attention, and identity scripts, they really paint a complex picture of psychological inheritance.
They do. It's not simple. It's a tapestry woven with threads that are both positive and supportive, and others that are restrictive or painful.
But using these Gestalt principles, these ideas, can help us decode those patterns, right? And maybe even transform them.
That's the hope. It gives us a framework for understanding how these things operate, and that understanding is the foundation for conscious change. It's not usually a linear journey, though.
More like a spiral.
Exactly, a spiral of deepening understanding. You revisit themes, see them with new eyes as you gain more awareness.
Which leads to some big questions for ourselves, doesn't it? Like, what am I ready to let go of? What patterns no longer serve me?
And equally, what aspects of my inheritance do I want to consciously embrace or reclaim? What strengths or values are there? And ultimately, who do I choose to become moving forward?
This really feels like a turning point in the conversation.
Yeah.
Moving from just understanding the inheritance.
To deciding what to do with it. That's the pivotal question, isn't it? Do we remain passive inheritors, simply living out the old code? Or do we become active creators, rewriting the parts that hinder us?
It sounds like freedom lies in that choice.
Yeah.
But maybe it's not about rejecting the past entirely.
That's a crucial point. There's a paradox here. True freedom often comes not from rejecting our inheritance, but from fully accepting it first.
Accepting it, even the difficult parts.
Yes. Think of a tree and its roots, our psychological roots, the family values, fears, patterns. They are part of our foundation. Trying to deny them or cut them off entirely can actually cut us off from our own strength and history.
So acceptance isn't resignation. It doesn't mean being bound by the past.
Not at all. Acceptance means acknowledging what is, without judgment. Seeing the inheritance clearly, the good, the bad, the complicated. And from that place of acceptance, you gain the clarity and power to choose how to integrate it, how to move forward differently.
Seeing the inheritance less as a verdict and more as raw material.
Exactly. Raw material that you can consciously choose how to shape and repurpose. Maybe an inherited fear of failure, once understood and accepted, can be transformed into fuel for perseverance and careful planning rather than paralysis.
It sounds like alchemy. Turning base metal into gold, almost.
It is a kind of a psychological alchemy, yes. Integration. Bringing together these disparate elements, the light and shadow of our upbringing, the conflicting messages, the roles we played into a more cohesive, functional whole.
That sounds like challenging work. Yeah. Reconciling those conflicts within ourselves.
It requires vulnerability, patience, and courage. It's like piecing together a mosaic from shattered glass. The original pieces might be broken, but by mindfully putting them together, acknowledging each piece, you can create something new, whole, and uniquely beautiful.
And the effects of doing this work, they don't just stop with us, do they?
No, absolutely not. This is the ripple effect. Our psychological inheritance is part of a much larger continuum, stretching back through generations and potentially forward as well. It's isomorphism on a macro scale.
So the choices we make now about becoming aware and integrating these patterns.
They either perpetuate the old patterns, passing them on unconsciously, or they disrupt them. Interrupting a cycle, perhaps of anger or anxiety or unhealthy relationship dynamics, can have profound effects on future generations.
Like if a grandfather had anger issues, and the father did too, but the son does the work to understand and manage his anger differently.
He breaks the cycle. He chooses not to pass on that specific piece of the inheritance in the same form. There's an ethical dimension here, really. Through our own self-awareness and integration, we participate in a kind of collective evolution. It offers both responsibility and hope.
Which brings up a really powerful question. What kind of legacy do we want to leave? Emotionally, relationally?
Are we content to just pass on the same scripts we inherited? Or do we envision an alternative one that honors the past, learns from it, but isn't confined by it?
It's about consciously choosing what emotional and psychological furniture we want to furnish the future with.
Beautifully put. And it's important to remember, this isn't about reaching some final endpoint called fixed or healed.
Right, that spiral idea again.
Exactly. Self-discovery, integration. It's an infinite spiral. Each insight opens up new territory, new questions. There's no final resolution, just ongoing growth and deepening awareness.
So this deep dive, The Learner, it really shows that understanding this invisible house, we've inherited all those ingrained patterns, the unfinished business that's the crucial first step.
It is. because awareness brings choice. By seeing these Gestalt principles, the perceptual filters, the unfinished gestalts, the identity scripts playing out in your own life, you gain the power to shape your present and your future.
Instead of just being directed by the echoes of the past. So maybe think about that unfinished business in your own life. What perceptual filters might be shaping what you see?
What scripts of identity feel like they were handed down, and which ones are you ready to maybe start rewriting? It's an ongoing journey, this exploration.
Absolutely. And we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights, some useful tools perhaps, to continue that journey with, well, with greater awareness and intention.